This story begins with our little protagonist Kotaro, who arrives at an apartment complex where he plans to rent a room to live in from now on. Later, we meet our second protagonist, a man named Kurino, who is a manga artist. Kotaro arrives at Kurino's room and formally introduces himself to him, then gives him tissues as a welcome gift. Kurino thanks him and asks about his parents since children are prohibited in the complex, to which Kotaro replies that he lives alone and pays for his own room, which unsettles Kurino because he thinks about how it's possible for a kid to pay his own room without depending on anyone, while he suffers from hunger because his job as a manga artist is not very profitable. Later, Kotaro tries to take a bath, but since he can't find the shower, decides to ask Kurino for help with this. Kurino gives him a card for a bathhouse to go to, since there are no showers in the apartment rooms. After receiving this help, the kid plans to go alone to the place, which seems like a bad idea to Kurino, so he decides to accompany him, and in this way, they end up bathing together. After this, Kurino asks the kid about his parents, to which he replies that he has no parents, which saddens Kurino. So to ease the situation, he tells him that he also has no parents, since he lost them in an accident time ago, which leads Kotaro to feel sorry for him, thinking that he surely feels very lonely. The next day, Kotaro goes shopping and Kurino follows him. So the boy asks him why he's following him, to which Kurino says he doesn't exactly know why he does it, although the boy suspects it's because the boy feels very lonely. Then they meet Mizuki, another tenant of the apartment, who thanks Kotaro for giving her tissues as a welcome gift too. And after seeing Kurino with him, she starts treating them like father and son, which makes Kurino uncomfortable. This same happens with more people in the supermarket, and for this reason, when they leave, Kotaro apologizes to Kurino for making him feel that way in front of everyone. Although the man really didn't care about this, and before he can explain it to the kid, he leaves on his own. On another day, while they take out the trash, they see that Mizuki is unconscious in her room because she drank too much, so they help her up. After this, Kotaro realizes that the girl had been crying, so he goes to the store with Kurino to look for something that can help her. In this way, Kotaro gives her a frozen bottle for her eye, to which she wonders why he's doing this, and the kid replies that since he noticed she had been crying, he knew that the best solution was to put something cold to stop the tears. She is delighted by this charm act and feels relieved knowing that he didn't judge her wrongly when he saw her cry. Kurino asks Kotaro how he knows the technique of putting something cold on the eyes to stop the tears, since that's something only adults know, to which he replies that he knows this because in his past he saw many adults cry and resort to that technique. Later that day, he injures his knees while trying to scare away a pigeon, which forces him to use disinfectant for his wounds, knowing that it will hurt a lot, but he still does it, and after this, he goes to Kurino's room to show him what he just did, hoping the man will congratulate him for being strong and enduring the pain. Kurino congratulates him, albeit reluctantly, since the kid insisted so much on showing him his wounds that as an adult, he felt obliged to empathize with him, and to make him happy, he draws Tanosa Man on his bandages, a character from a show that Kotaro likes, something that Kurino already knew because he had been paying attention to Kotaro all this time. By doing this, the kid smiles for the first time, making Kurino smile too, giving him enough motivation to continue with his work. But suddenly, another man named Tamaru arrives at the room, who forcefully takes Kotaro to his room. Here, Tamaru gives the kid a Tanosa Man plush toy, which he accepts kindly, although after hearing Tamaru say that the plush was actually for his son and not for him, he returns it as he doesn't want to accept something that doesn't belong to him, and much less thinks to accept a false gesture of friendship. This led the kid to ask Kurino if the drawings he made on his bandages were a sincere gesture, to which he answers yes, since all this time he had known him, he knew what he liked and what would make him happy. For this reason, Kotaro runs to his room and starts singing happily the main theme of the Tanosa Man show, while looking at the drawings on his bandages made by Kurino, whom he caught some affection for. Chapter 2. One day of that week, Kotaro went to Kurino's house and watched the Tanosa Man show with him, making the man wonder why the kid likes this mediocre show. So now in the present, while they both take a shower, he asks him directly, to which he replies that he watches the show not for its plot, but rather because it holds a special place in his heart, as Tanosa Man has always been his company during the nights. The next day, while Kotaro watches the Tanosa Man show as usual, he suddenly hears the narrator's voice announce that the final chapter will premiere that night, so he decides to do something unusual, which we will see later. Meanwhile, Kurino also learns about this thanks to Tamaru, so they both plan to visit the kid that night and watch the final chapter with him. Returning to the latter, we see the unusual thing he proposed to do, which is to stand outside the apartments and imitate Tanosa Man for the people passing by. He did this because it was something that he did in the past in front of his mother, something that made her happy. As night falls, Kurino, Tamaru, and Kotaro enjoy watching the last chapter of Tanosa Man, and afterward, Kurino asks the kid if he will be okay after this, as Tanosa Man will no longer be there to watch over him at night. The kid responded affirmatively, showing maturity and bravery, but this doesn't last long, as when he tries to sleep, he can't because of the absence of Tanosa Man. So to relax, he goes along with Kurino to the bathhouse, But to their surprise, the place is closed until further notice. This negatively impacts the kid, as we can see that in the following days he distances from Karino because he doesn't want anyone to approach him while feeling unclean and smelling bad. This attitude prompts Karino to ask why he's keeping his distance, and after the kid tells him the reason, he tells him that he doesn't care if he smells bad or not, he'll be there for him. Upon hearing this, Kotaro runs away, to which Mizuki, who was with them, tells Karino to mind his words and asks him to treat the kid with more empathy, because his strange behavior today may be because something related to his past. Returning to Kotaro, he is forced to take a bath in his room sink because he wants to go out and not feel uncomfortable around people. Then Mizuki visits him and he kindly invites her to have a sleepover together, to which she is forced to decline as she works every night until late. The kid understands and hopes that next time she will accept his invitation, but like any other kid, he waits for the girl to return from work for several consecutive nights so that eventually she'll accept his invitation. This led to him not sleeping well and getting dark circles under his eyes, so Mizuki, now that she has a day off, invites him to a sleepover in her room, to which he agrees, and although he had a nice time with the girl, in the end he can't sleep because he's not used to sleeping without Tanosa-man protecting him. For this reason, the next day, Mizuki tells this to Karino, so he, in an attempt to help Kotaro, moves his mattress closer to the kid's room, which miraculously works, as later the kid tells him that this time he was able to sleep perfectly without any problem. Days later, now the kid heads to the city's kindergarten opening ceremony, where he signs up alone and later sits alone, since he has to live his life independently without parents or guardians. On the other hand, Karino, Mizuki, and Tamaro are surprised to find out that the kid went alone to a place they still don't know, but they discover moments later thanks to Karino, as he recognized that the hat a girl was wearing was the same one Kotaro was wearing today, and upon hearing that the girl was heading to the kindergarten, they go there. In this way, they find Kotaro, and seeing him alone at the ceremony, they keep him company and treat him like a son, which calms the kid down and makes him feel less lonely. Days pass and Kotaro is forced to buy a bento, a lunch prepared by each child's parents, but since he has no parents, he simply bought an ordinary bento. But when he takes it to class and sees that the other children have nicer bentos made with love, he decides to do something. The next day, the kid sets out to go to the supermarket and asks several people to help him prepare his bento, which they do gladly and kindly. In this way, Kotaro shows his new bento to his classmates, and they tell him he looks bad, but this doesn't matter to our little boy because he appreciates more the love and affection with which the bento was made than its appearance. For this reason, after classes, the kid goes to the supermarket to thank the people who helped him, but not finding them, he decides to wait patiently in the company of the cashier. Chapter 3. On another day, our little boy encounters a balloon vendor and decides to buy several of them. However, the vendor informs him that balloons are sold one per person. Using his wit, Kotaro pretends to be different children and manages to buy several balloons without the vendor realizing. Afterward, Kotaro seeks out Karino to ask him to draw on the balloons, which he agrees to after the kid praises his artistic talent. Meanwhile, the vendor wonders why Kotaro bought several balloons for himself and then sees him playing alone in the park with the balloons decorated to resemble his family. This touches the vendor, who wishes the kid well and hopes his balloons last a lifetime. The next day after school, Kotaro returns home with Karino. But suddenly, Karino receives a call from his friend Fukuno, who asks him to come to the editorial office immediately to discuss the manga illustrations they are working on. Karino is forced to go to the editorial office along with the kid. Once there, Fukuno sees Karino's illustrations and tells him that they look so bad. Kotaro defends his friend's work, challenging Fukuno to make the drawings himself to see if he can do better. This makes Fukuno uncomfortable, so he goes to the bathroom. Then the kid asks Fukuno why he was so tough on Karino, to which he replies that he did it to motivate him to work harder and unleash his hidden talent. Thanks to this conversation, Kotaro understands that Fukuno is not a bad person. In fact, he's quite the opposite. Trying to emulate him and be as good as him, Kotaro commits to accompanying Karino to work and conspiring with Fukuno to be honest about the boy's work, hoping to awaken his hidden talent. Several days later, Kotaro seeks help from Tamaro to dress nicely, to which he happily agrees, thinking the kid is doing it because he's in love with a girl from his class. They go shopping together, and when the kid finds his ideal trendy clothes, he asks everyone in the store if they think he looks nice, to which they respond that he looks beautiful. This makes Tamaro wonder why the kid is dressing nicely for a reason other than what he thought, so he asks him directly. Kotaro replies that he wants to dress nicely to make people like him, especially his classmates. Upon hearing this, Tamaro becomes serious and gives the kid a lesson. We can't make everyone like us, so it doesn't matter if we dress well or badly. What matters is what's inside each one. At night, Mizuki works at the city nightclub as usual when she suddenly sees Kotaro waiting for her, and this happens several days, so the girl is forced to speak privately with him and explain that he can't be here, and by the way, ask why he comes to see her. The kid replies that he comes to see her because he wants to spend more time with her, to which the girl replies that he doesn't have to worry about that since they can spend time together when she's not working. This leads Mizuki to remember one day when she was having breakfast with the kid, and he suddenly ran out of the room because he unintentionally overheard her talking on the phone about planning to move. Kotaru reaffirms this and mentions that he wants her not to leave him because he has grown fond of her, which moves her so much that she promises not to move and to always be with him. In response, the kid becomes excited and gives her a cold hug because he doesn't know how to show affection. After this, the girl, the kid, and Karino go out to spend time together as a family, and when the adults try to take pictures of the kid, he complains and runs around the place so that they don't take any pictures of him, which worked quite well because when Mizuki returns home and checks the photos, Kotaru appears blurred in all of them. This leads Karino to ask the kid why he doesn't let himself be photographed, to which he replies that he simply doesn't like it, but in reality it's because of something from his past. It turns out that the kid has this trauma with photos because his father, thanks to a photo, managed to find him in the orphanage where he lived after his mother. The father wasn't a very good person as he arrived at the place shouting and demanding to see the kid, which made him scared and afraid of him. Since there are no photos of the time they spent together, the next day Karino gives the kid a drawing illustrating that beautiful moment which brightens his day. After that, we meet Kobayashi, a novice lawyer to whom her boss assigns the task of delivering Kotaru's weekly salary, which comes from his mother's life insurance. She arrives at the kid's apartment and he receives her happily and invites her into play, to which she is forced to play. After that, Kobayashi gives the kid his salary and he asks her where that money comes from, to which she replies that it's courtesy of Good Samaritan. She had to say this so as not to break the kid's heart if he found out that the salary is from his deceased mother. Then the kid gives her a gift for her visit and she leaves with her job done. Later she meets her boss and they both go home. The girl tells him that the kid moved her a lot because he treated her quite well and even gave her a gift. This caused her to tell her boss that she is willing to do everything possible to keep the kid from finding out the truth about his salary. Chapter 4. On another day of adventures, Kotaru goes to the house of his classmate named Kakeru, who had previously invited him. While they play, Kotaru sees how Kakeru needs the help of his maid to do anything, so he thinks about making him do things on his own without depending on anyone. For this reason, Kotaru takes his classmate fishing to learn to earn food on his own. With much effort, Kakeru manages to catch 2 crabs, and they later go to Kotaru's house to cook them. Once there, our little boy reveals to Kakeru that he did all this to teach him to be independent and to prepare him for when his parents and maid are not with him. He becomes sad upon hearing this because he can't imagine how he would live without them, so he takes Kotaru's advice and changes his attitude, showing himself happy to learn to be independent and starts cooking the crabs on his own. While he does this, he notices that our little boy lives without company, so he tells him that if he ever feels lonely, he will accompany him wherever he goes, leaving Kotaru impressed after hearing such soothing words for his heart. On another day, while Kotaru and Karino return home, the kid mentions that his birthday is coming up soon, and this is heard by Mizuki and Tamaru, who suddenly appear to plan a party for him along with Karino. For this reason, in the following days, Kotaru prepares mentally and physically to blow out the candles on the first try as he believes that by doing this, he would attract luck. The birthday of Kotaru arrives and his friends accompany him. Mizuki places the cake on the table and together with the others, they turn around to put on masks and prepare to sing happy birthday. However, to their surprise, when they turn back around, they see that both Kotaru and the cake have disappeared. And all of this is because our little boy wanted to celebrate not his birthday, but that of his cat friends. One day later, Kakeru thinks about running away from home with Kotaru's help because he feels that his mother bothers him a lot, and by doing this, he wants to make her miss him and plead for him to return. In this way, the boys spend the whole day outside but without leaving the city, and after all the fun, they end up at Kotaru's house. Upon entering his house, Kakeru realizes that no one was waiting for Kotaru, so he feels sad for him, and thinking that his family must be upset because he ran away from home, he decides to return home and apologizes to our little boy for making him lose his time. All of this affects the boy as he becomes sad to know that he has no one waiting for him. Luckily, Karino arrives, who has been looking for the kid all day so that they can take a bath together, showing great concern for him, which soothes Kotaru's heart knowing that he is not alone after all. Days later, at the kindergarten parents' meeting, Karino attends as Kotaru's tutor, which causes the mothers to look at him strangely because after going with the child, they secretly speak about how our little boy's family seems somewhat dysfunctional because he has Karino, Tamaru, and Mizuki as tutors, and none of them are direct relatives of the kid. All of this is overheard by Takuya's mother, another one of Kotaru's classmates, who is in charge of the parents' meetings. The next day, at another parents' meeting, she notifies all the mothers that they must help with the festival that will take place this afternoon, but none of them pay attention and hears when Karino commits to taking care of everything for the festival alone, which impresses Takuya's mother. In this way, we see that the festival is a complete success, and our little boy has a great time, especially because all his school friends and neighbors attended. Due to this, Takuya's mother thanks Karino for having done all the work alone, to which he replies that he does everything to see Kotaru happy because without parents, he has no one to bring a smile to his face. This affects Takuya's mother's heart because she sees Kurino as a good example of what a father should be and hopes that one day he will decide to be Kotoru's official father. Chapter 5. Several weeks later, Kotoru goes to the supermarket with Kurino to buy tissues. The kid chooses expensive and quality tissues as he always does, which is strange to Kurino, because later while they return home, the kid mentions that those tissues taste sweet. While Kurino is at home working, he manages to hear in a TV interview how a person, after losing their parents and having nothing to eat, resorted to eating tissues to survive. Due to this, the next day Kurino scolds Kotoru, telling him that it is not necessary for him to eat tissues to survive, so he forces him to buy inexpensive tissues to ensure that he does not fall back into that habit. As a consequence of this, our little boy is forced to cook several meals to satisfy his hunger, although he ends up preparing more food than usual, but luckily Kurino and Mizuki help him with this. The same thing happens the next night, but now involving Tamaru. In this way, his adoptive family is complete, so he's happy knowing that he's having dinner in company once again. Changing scenes, the kindergarten teacher mentally prepares herself before entering classes because this job exhausts her so much that she always has to fake her smile. While she gives instructions to the children about a small play they will perform, she sees Kotoru and wonders why he never smiles, and since just then the kid offered to play the role of the smiling son for the play, she does not believe it is the right role for him since he must smile. Faced with this, Kotoru explains to the teacher that he knows how to fake his smile, and he demonstrates it, leaving her impressed and even more so after he did it even better in the play. For this reason, she congratulates the kid for being a great smiling son, and after this, she tells him that she hopes to see him smiling more often because he looks cute when he smiles. In that, the kid mentions that he could try to smile more often, but he cannot do it knowing that she has to fake her smile all the time. The teacher is amazed that the kid has noticed this about her, but he tells her that it is something more than evident, which makes her genuinely smile for the first time because his comment amused her. Sunday arrives and Kurino must deliver his work to the editorial, but since he falls ill as soon as he leaves his apartment, our little boy is the one who ends up going to the place. After delivering the work to Fukuno, Kotoru asks him several questions like, "Why do you work on a Sunday? Do you eat well? Or aren't you sleepy?" To answer all of these questions, Fukuno simply tells him not to treat him like a patient in psychological treatment, and he replies that he has a wife and children who take good care of him at home. By saying this, Kotoru scolds the man and tells him to go back home and spend quality time with his family, who surely miss him a lot. These words cause Fukuno to see that the kid behaves too mature and empathetic for his age, so to make him feel more like a child, he takes him to the children's magazine department, where the kid enjoys watching Tenosa-man figures and playing video games, despite denying that he had a good time. The next day, Fukuno comments on all this situation to Kurino, emphasizing that he did all that to see the kid happy and behaving like a child because it is not healthy for a child to behave like an adult, and after this, he runs into the kid just as he leaves Kurino's room. The kid tells him that he had a good time on the outing they had, and he is willing to go out with him as many times as he wants. Days after that, we see Kotoru carefully observing the belly of a woman who is a food vendor. The kid buys all the meals from her day after day until at one point he approaches her to reveal that he has been watching her for a long time, and he tells her that he is worried about the size of her belly because he thinks the supermarket owners have forced her to eat all the unsold meals. Upon hearing this, the woman cannot help but burst into laughter, and after this, she tells the kid that the size of her belly is due to her being pregnant, and since the kid does not know what it means for a woman to get pregnant, she replies that a pregnancy happens when a father and a mother love each other so much that they create a new being inside the woman, which is the treasure of the parents. This leaves Kotoru speechless, and later he asks his cat friend if he has memories of his parents showing love, as he does not. This leads our little boy to think that he is not a treasure as the woman made him believe he was, so he thinks he failed as a son. For this reason, the kid commits to striving to be the treasure that his parents wish he would someday be. Chapter 6. A boy named Oda arrives at the apartment complex, and the first thing he does is visit Kotoru's room to beg him to be his friend, as he is new to the place. The kid agrees, and in the evening, he gets ready to go to the showers with his new friend, which makes Kurino extremely jealous. In the following days, we see how Kotoru and Oda get along very well, as they both share many moments together, which makes them realize that they are much more alike than they thought. But not everything is rosy, because at a moment when Oda finds Kurino without Kotoru, he asks for information about the kid's life, something that bothers Kurino, as he doesn't intend to tell him anything, because if the kid didn't want to tell them, neither will he. This is how we later find out why Oda asked this to Kurino, and that is because he is a detective who works for Kotoru's father and came to the place not only to verify that the kid lives here, but also to get to know him and report everything to the kid's father. Days pass, and Tamaru can't help but feel jealous seeing Kotoru spending time with Oda, so he goes to Kurino to discuss this. They both talk about what they think of Oda, and Kurino tells Tamaru that he found it strange that Oda wanted to know about the kid's life. Tamaru, upon hearing this, goes crazy because he didn't tell him earlier, so on the same night, they both go to Oda's room to confront him. After Tamaru bribed him with money, Oda confesses what we already know, that he is a detective hired by the kid's father who came here to find out about his life. This confession upsets the men so much that Tamaru almost hits him hard, but to his misfortune, this was prevented by Kotaro himself, who arrived just in time to defend his friend. The next day, Kotaro goes to classes accompanied by Kurino, which seems strange to him since he thought Oda would accompany the kid. Upon this, the kid tells him that Oda had to leave suddenly due to work issues, something that alarms Kurino to the point that he tells Mizuki and Tamaru about it, and the three of them commit to accompany Kotaro everywhere in the following days. This attitude from them annoys the kid because he doesn't like being treated as if he were a weak child who can't take care of himself, and that's why he locks himself in his room and refuses to talk to them because he's upset with how they treated him. A day passes and the adults wait for the kid to return from classes, as he is still so upset that he didn't allow them to follow him. Then Oda arrives, which tests the patience of the adults, but they are forced to calm down when Kotaro arrives, who plans to go play in the park with Takuya. Oda decides to accompany him and ask the others to come along because he wants to tell them the truth about what he did during the time he was missing. While the children play, Oda tells the adults that his job as Kotaro's father's detective is already finished with a happy ending, as he gave him false information about the location where the kid lives. This surprises the adults, so they ask him why he did that, to which Oda responds that he did it because he suffered from his father in his childhood that left marks on his body. He didn't do all this just out of empathy for the kid, but also to respect his decision, because it turns out that Kotaro knew all this time that Oda was his father's detective, and at some point he asked him as a favor not to reveal his location yet, exclaiming that he can do it when he becomes stronger to confront his father without fear. Because of this, Kurino takes the initiative and helps the kid prepare physically and mentally for the day he reunites with his father, although he knows that this won't solve the root of the problem, but at least it will help Kotaro become strong enough to understand that the problem is not him, but his father. Days later, Oda goes from room to room in search of a box, and in the end, he ends up in Kotaro's room, where he and his friends prepared a farewell party for him. In the midst of the party, Kotaro mentions to Oda that now that his job as his father's detective is over, they can be real friends and not just work friends, to which Oda agrees and feels happy that the kid wants him in a special way. After this, the kid gives him the coveted box that he had been looking for, which is his farewell gift, and after saying goodbye to everyone and taking the train back home, he opens it and finds a magnifying glass, which fills him with tenderness and happiness because the kid took the trouble to give him something he likes. Chapter 7. One day after classes, Kana's mother tells Kurino that his daughter wants to go to Kotaro's house to play with him, to which he has no problem receiving her. The real problem with this is that neither of them knows what to play to have fun. This situation occurs day after day for an entire week, and even though Kana has confessed that she doesn't have fun playing with Kotaro, she still insists on going to his house to play. On one of those days, she reveals that her mother is the one who forces her to play with our little boy, so later Kurino confronts her. The man asks her to be more considerate of Kotaro's feelings, as Kana doesn't enjoy playing with him, and Kotaro does everything he can to make her happy, but without any success, so in the end, he scolds her, telling her not to force her daughter to do things she doesn't want to do. Later, on her way back home, she talks to the girl to apologize for this big mistake. In another unrelated topic, we see that Ki, another classmate of Kotaro, tells the teacher that he feels unwell, so he is taken to the infirmary. Once there, our kid approaches him to offer him an orange, as it is a good source of vitamin C and will help him recover. The next day after this, now it is Kotaro who falls sick with a fever, but he refuses to believe that he is sick because he considers himself a strong kid who cannot get sick. Then Ki feels unwell again, and the teacher takes him to the infirmary, and upon this, Kotaro follows them and asks Ki why he always admits to feeling unwell in front of everyone. Ki responds that he doesn't care if they see him as weak or not. He prefers to show himself unwell to others than to infect them and pretend everything is fine. After this, Kotaro apologizes for considering him a weak child and thinks that there are still things in life he needs to learn. Later, Kotaro goes to the forest to search for leaves to eat, and then 3 kids arrive at the place to do the same. The eldest one talks to our little boy, and upon hearing that he doesn't have parents to take care of him, he becomes sentimental because he also doesn't have parents. After this, he leaves the place, leaving his younger brothers alone with Kotaro for 2 whole hours. So after waiting this long, Kotaro asks them where their house is and takes them there. There they find the eldest brother eating some fries comfortably, but he is forced to give them to his younger brothers, which makes him upset for always having to do this, hating his role as the eldest brother, especially for having had a mother who abandoned him and left him in charge of that mission. Faced with this, Kotaro asks him why he is not fulfilling the mission his mother gave him, to which he responds that he doesn't have to fulfill it, as it is his mother's fault for abandoning him that they are now in that situation. Hearing this, Kotaro becomes agitated and tells him that nobody abandoned him, and he shouts this several times, revealing that he is actually speaking from his own experience. This leads to a flashback of the kid's past, where his mother is forced to leave him because she couldn't continue her relationship with his father. But before leaving, she asks him to take care of himself and survive as best as he can. Several days later, the kid, Mizuki, and Kurino have lunch together while watching television. Suddenly, the girl receives a text message from her ex-boyfriend asking her to give their relationship another try, but she deletes the message, which turns out to be a bad idea, as that same night, the guy follows Mizuki after work to talk more clearly with her. The next day, Mizuki returns home wearing a face mask, which strikes Kurino and Kotaru as odd, so they ask her what's wrong, to which she leads them to her room and shows them a bruise, confessing that it is the result of a blow her ex-boyfriend gave her for not wanting to get back together with him. Kurino recommends the girl go to the police to report him, and on the other hand, Tamaru prepares to teach the guy a lesson. Kotaru, from his point of view, tells Mizuki that it would be best for her to escape from the city and move far away from here, and despite the others trying to change the kid's mind, he insists that Mizuki must leave for her own good. After this, Kotaru starts bothering Mizuki by ringing her doorbell several times because he really doesn't want the girl to leave, and when the girl catches him and they start talking seriously about this, they both manage to empathize with each other about this situation, as the kid has gone through something similar with his father, and he knows that escaping is the best solution. Thus, in the afternoon, the girl says goodbye to everyone and prepares to leave, not without first apologizing to our little boy for breaking her promise to never leave him, and thanking him for all the moments they shared together, and having said all this, she leaves. This whole scene causes the kid to become sentimental and cry for the first time, something that we cannot see since he is wearing a Tonosa Man mask. But Kurino and Tamaru are certain that it happened. Chapter 8. It's a new day, and Kurino tells Kotaru that he has to go to the movies and watch films to get inspired and create new stories for his upcoming manga. The kid replies that he will accompany him, but not alone, he will go with his classmates. Once at the cinema, Kurino doesn't have a good time because firstly, he spent a lot of money buying food for the children, and then he can't enjoy the movie because he tries to quiet the noisy kids. Due to these attitudes of his classmates, Kotaru lets them know that Kurino doesn't have much money to indulge their whims, so he asks them to leave him alone since he came to the cinema for work reasons after all. As a result, when they return home, each classmate goes with their mothers, while on Kotaru and Kurino's side, the latter plans to watch another movie at the cinema to fulfill his work this time, and he invites the kid to accompany him, thinking of watching the Tonosa Man movie. So both go to the cinema, and Kurino can't believe how bad the movie is, thus cutting off any possible inspiration for him. In a small anecdote, Kotaro meets a kid named Yuta. He explains to our little boy that he came here to look for his father, who turns out to be none other than Tamaru, and after waiting several hours with Kotaru in the man's room, he arrives and the kid runs to hug him. Upon this, Tamaru becomes serious upon seeing him as he shouldn't be here. For this reason, Tamaru is forced to send the kid back home. Seeing all this, Kotaru reproaches the man for this since the kid came from afar just to see him. So Tamaru is forced to confess to our little boy that he would have really liked to be with his son, but he had to send him home because he wants his son to respect and obey his mother since he came here because he checked his mother's private things to find out where he lives. Changing scenes, days later, a new tenant arrives at the apartment complex named Teikai. This woman is quite strict and perfectionist about keeping order, which is why we see her ordering Kurino and Tamaru to sort out their trash. As strange as it may seem, she has a fear or aversion to children, and this is noticed by Kurino, as he sees her start sweating every time she sees the children, and she even starts running away from Kotaru as he pursues her as if it were a game. Because of these attitudes, the next night, Kurino goes to talk alone with her to ask her what's wrong with the children. She confesses that she doesn't like children because they make her feel uncomfortable, which results in her feeling judged by others, since she is one of the few women in the world who doesn't like children. After telling this, Teki suddenly starts crying because what she has is really a serious problem. So she closes the door on the kid's face, leaving him worried about her situation, although everything is partially resolved the next day thanks to our little boy offering his help to the girl. Days after these events, Kotaru invites the adults to his house because he wants to inaugurate his museum at home, where he will exhibit various important objects from his life. Among them, we can highlight the bandages when he hurt his knees, the drawing that Kurino made for him when they went on a picnic with Mizuki, and as strange as it may seem, some latex gloves. These gloves catch Teki's attention, who asks the kid about their story, to which Kotaru replies that these gloves belong to his mother, who used them every time she changed her clothes or combed her hair. Upon hearing this, Takara becomes sentimental and asks the kid to throw away those gloves immediately, to which he refuses, so the girl ends up shouting at him to throw the gloves away once and for all. Why did she do this? It turns out that in Teki's past, her mother always wore gloves to change her clothes or comb her hair, and the reason her mother did this is that she felt repulsed to touch her own daughter. After this, Kotaro apologizes for what happened to her in the past and tells her that he still doesn't intend to throw away his mother's gloves because despite coming from a memory not precisely healthy, it is important for him to keep it anyway, which makes the girl sad. Chapter 9. Weeks later, Kotaro goes to the dentist to treat his cavities, and strangely enough, the dentist named Oba starts chatting with the kid for a long time before attending to him, which catches the attention of his assistant. For this reason, after the kid leaves, the assistant asks Oba why he talks with the children, as she finds it curious. Oba responds that he talks with the children to help them vent, as he had an experience in the past with a girl named Kono, who had many cavities, which was unusual for a girl her age, so he concluded that she was malnourished. And to make this story sadder, Kono never returned to his office, so he couldn't help her with her feeding problem. After hearing this whole story, the assistant understands Oba more, so she gives him her support to continue helping children with their problems. At night, while Teika returns from work, she encounters our little boy, who offers to protect her from the heavy rain, to which she says it's not necessary, so the kid offers to sing to other people, all of whom accept without a problem. So every rainy night, the girl sees how Kotaro always accompanies people to their homes, protecting them from the rain, and for this reason, one night she stands in front of the kid and asks him why he does this. Kotaro replies that it's because his father taught him to protect others, as he used to be a good person who positively influenced his son. This moves the girl's heart, so this time she accepts that the kid accompanies her home, but she holds the umbrella this time so that he feels protected by someone at least once in these rainy days. The next day, a guy named Tezuko arrives at the apartment complex, who upon seeing Kotaro happily greets him. As it turns out, they are childhood friends, so after this encounter, they go to the kid's room to talk and spend time together. While eating something, Tezuko mentions that he knows the kid receives money from a Good Samaritan, so he asks him to lend him some money, to which the kid agrees without a problem. So in the following days, Kobayashi visits Kotaro more frequently to deliver his payment. Upon this, Karino asks the girl what her regular visits are about, to which she replies that they are because Kotaro is asking for money more often, which she finds strange because the kid didn't do this before, so she asks Karino if he knows what might be happening to the kid. Karino suspects Tezuko for a moment, so on the night of that day, he confronts him. After Karino asks Tezuko if he knows anything about Kotaro's finances, Tezuko is direct and replies that the kid is asking for more money from Kobayashi because, along with him, they plan to rent an apartment elsewhere. For this reason, Karino lets Kobayashi know about this, and she, using her title as a lawyer, tells him that she will check Tezuko's life information to make sure he's not lying. Thanks to this, the girl discovers that Tezuko has accumulated a large debt throughout his life, and she concludes that the man's money from Kotaro to pay off that debt. With the picture clear, she and Karino let Kotaro know about this, but he says he doesn't think it's true because he blindly believes in his friend. Unable to convince the kid that Tezuko is his money, Karino and Kobayashi later confront the man to confess his sin, but he denies everything and asks them not to meddle in matters that are not theirs. Moments later, Kotaro arrives and invites him to his room, and there he confesses that he knows what he has been doing, which makes him nervous, so he starts denying everything. But as strange as it may sound, the kid tells him that it doesn't matter if he steals his money because he was happy when he told him they would live together even though this was a lie. Upon hearing all these words, Tezuko starts crying and apologizes to the kid for taking advantage of him, as he can't bear the guilt that Kotaro trusted him and defended him on several occasions in the past, while he took advantage of his innocence. Days after this, we see Kotaro collecting cans to sell them later, something that Karino and Kobayashi don't know why he's doing, so he asks him. The kid replies that he does this because he wants to fulfill his biggest dream, to build a big house where he can live with all the friends he has made so far. Upon hearing this, Karino blushes and Kobayashi, on the other hand, becomes so sentimental that she starts crying. Chapter 10. Weeks later, Fukuno assigns Karino to start drawing the manga they've been planning, so he will have a lot of work to do. Because of this, Fukuno asks if he will have time to pick up Kotaro after classes, to which he replies yes, but this ends up not being the case as the next day a girl named Akane, who is Karino's ex-girlfriend, looks for Kotaro. As they return home, Karino rushes to find the kid, but he sees him returning with a cane, which angers him because the kid was too trusting to accept being picked up by someone he doesn't know. 3 days before all this happened, we can see how Akane arrives at Karino's apartment after arguing with her current partner. She notices him tired and without energy, but he, despite all this, goes to look for Kotaro every day. For this reason, going back to the present, Akane tells the kid that Karino doesn't have time to pick him up after classes, so from now on, she'll be the one to pick him up. This makes him sad as he believes Karino doesn't want to pick him up because he thinks he's a burden to him. For this reason, on the night of that day, when Karino proposes to accompany the kid to the showers, the latter tells him that it's not necessary for him to accompany him, and he emphasizes that he no longer needs him to accompany him anywhere, as now Akane will take on that responsibility. Ironically, this affects the kid a lot because days later, in the middle of a musical play in his class, he can't help but feel sad not to see Karino among the audience, But as if by miracle, Karino appears, causing the kid to become happy and sing with great strength and at the top of his lungs. After this, Karino and Akane have a private chat where the girl wants to know why he insists on accompanying the kid everywhere if he already has a lot of work to do, to which Karino replies that the Kotoru is his motivation to continue striving hard in his works, so he doesn't intend to leave him alone as he has grown very fond of him. Thanks to this, as the three return home, Akane apologizes to the kid for telling him what she said, that is, that Karino was too busy to pick him up, and to fix things, she tells him that Karino actually feels that he loves him and needs him a lot in his life. This encourages him to approach Karino and promise not to stay away from him. Days later, the kid and Karino go to the cemetery of a distant city, which was the Kotoru's idea as his deceased mother's parents lie here. The two proceed to place flowers on the grave of the deceased, and after this, they start cleaning it. While doing this, Karino manages to see the name of the kid's mother, so to prevent him from seeing it, he stands firm in front of the grave to cover the name. This makes our little boy uncomfortable because while he is praying, his friend is behaving rudely according to him. In Kotoru's prayer, he asks his grandparents to take care of him and help him achieve his goals in life, but above all, he asks them to bring his mother back to him. Upon saying this, Kotoru becomes a little depressed, so he asks Karino if his mother will ever come back, to which he is forced to lie to the kid, telling him that his mother will return sooner or later, which the little boy believes as he considers Karino to be the most sincere person he has ever met, who could never lie to him. After all this, as they both return home, Karino can't help but think about the lie he told the kid, so he tells him that from now on, he will accompany him to the cemetery whenever he wants to go, for two reasons: to make sure Kotoru doesn't see his mother's name on the grave, and to tell her about all the nice moments her son has lived with him. After this, they meet Tamaro and Teiki, and they ask the kid why he is so happy, to which he replies that it's because from now on, Karino will be his best friend. After saying this, they all head to the apartments, smiling to see Kotoru fully happy. This is how this comedic but emotional anime ends.